Welcome to the Zombie Story Zone. Prepare for a thrilling, edge-of-your-seat adventure as we take you to the far reaches of space in Zombies in Space. Follow an astronaut crew who stumbles upon a terrifying discovery, a planet overrun by a new breed of zombies. Can they survive the undead nightmare? You don't want to miss this one. If you're a fan of sci-fi horror, be sure to hit that like button, subscribe for more gripping tales, and share this story with fellow zombie enthusiasts. Let's dive into the madness together.
The dark expanse of space stretched out endlessly before them. The small, cramped confines of the United Earth Space Station orbited a distant, unnamed planet deep in the uncharted territories of the galaxy. Commander Jackson Rivers stared at the blue-green orb below, his thoughts heavy. They had been sent to investigate a strange signal that NASA had intercepted weeks ago. But nothing could have prepared them for what lay ahead. "Commander, we've detected life signs on the surface," said Dr. Lila Park, the station's lead scientist, her voice cutting through the static of the intercom. "Life signs?" Jackson furrowed his brow. "There shouldn't be any life down there. That planet's been declared barren for centuries." Lila's voice hesitated. "They are strange, Commander. The readings are erratic, but they're there." Jackson turned to his second-in-command, Lieutenant Ava Morales, whose sharp eyes reflected the eerie glow of the planet. "Prep the shuttle. We're going down." The shuttle hummed as it descended through the atmosphere, shaking violently as it pierced the planet's outer layers. Commander Rivers, Ava, Lila, and two other crew members, Sergeant Brooks and Engineer Kiera Hall, sat strapped in their seats. The unknown awaited them. As they broke through the thick clouds, a ruined city came into view. Towering structures, long abandoned, crumbled beneath layers of alien vegetation. The air outside seemed hazy, almost tainted. The city below looked ancient, decaying from years of neglect, yet there was something unnervingly fresh about the damage. "This place gives me the creeps," Brooks muttered as the shuttle's landing gears deployed. "Stay focused," Jackson said as the shuttle touched down with a metallic thud. "We're here to investigate. Stick to the mission." The crew disembarked, their boots sinking into the soft, moss-covered ground. The atmosphere was breathable but thick, making every breath feel heavy, as if the very air was watching them. Jackson led the group, his eyes scanning the decaying structures. Something about the silence of the planet seemed wrong. "This way," Lila directed, holding a scanning device that beeped occasionally. "The life signs are coming from that direction." They moved cautiously, their weapons at the ready. The structures loomed above them like sentinels of a forgotten age, their walls etched with strange symbols that no one could decipher. They passed what seemed like an ancient plaza, overrun with the local flora, and arrived at the entrance to a vast underground facility. "Is this where the signal originated?" Ava asked, her voice barely above a whisper. Lila nodded. "It seems to be some kind of research base. The readings are stronger down here." The group descended into the darkness, the only light coming from their helmets and weapons. The deeper they went, the colder it became, and the air grew even more oppressive. Faint whispers echoed through the halls, though there was no sign of anyone, or anything, alive. Suddenly, Kiera froze, her breath catching in her throat. Did you hear that?" The group stopped, tense. A faint scraping sound echoed from down the corridor, followed by a low, guttural moan. The sound reverberated through the walls, making the hairs on the back of their necks stand on end. "Stay close," Jackson ordered, gripping his blaster tighter. They continued deeper into the facility until they entered a massive chamber. At the center of the room stood a series of glass pods, each one housing something, or someone, inside. The crew's eyes widened as they realized what they were looking at: humans. Or what was left of them. The figures in the pods were grotesque, their skin pale and decayed, eyes sunken, and their limbs twisted unnaturally. Some had missing flesh, while others had elongated limbs that looked anything but human. "God, what happened to them?" Ava whispered, her face paling. "This is impossible," Lila said, stepping closer to one of the pods. "These readings, they're not dead. But they're not alive either." Jackson moved to the control panel, wiping away the dust. This facility must have been conducting experiments. But why here? Why so far from Earth? Brooks cursed under his breath. "Doesn't matter. We should leave. Now." Before Jackson could respond, one of the pods emitted a sharp hiss. The crew's eyes darted to it as the glass began to crack. "Back up," Jackson shouted, but it was too late. The pod shattered, releasing its occupant. The creature stumbled forward, letting out a guttural growl. Its movements were jerky, but there was a terrifying hunger in its dead eyes. Before the crew could react, it lunged toward them with unnatural speed. Brooks raised his weapon and fired, hitting the creature square in the chest. But it didn't stop. It barely even slowed down. "Headshots." Jackson barked. "Go for the head." Ava quickly adjusted her aim and fired, hitting the creature between the eyes. It dropped instantly, a sickening thud echoing through the chamber. For a moment, there was silence, but it didn't last long. The other pods began to hiss, cracks forming along the glass. "We need to move," Jackson shouted, grabbing Lila and pushing her toward the exit. One by one, the creatures began to break free from their pods, their moans filling the chamber. The crew bolted for the door, but the horde was fast, too fast. "They're everywhere," Kira cried as they reached the corridor, the sound of shuffling feet and growls growing louder behind them. Jackson fired his blaster over his shoulder, but the creatures kept coming. "We need to get back to the shuttle." The crew sprinted through the maze of hallways, barely staying ahead of the infected. As they reached the facility's entrance, Brooks turned to hold them off. "Go. I'll cover you." "No," Jackson shouted, but it was too late. Brooks opened fire, taking down several creatures before one of them tackled him to the ground. His screams echoed through the halls as the others rushed toward the shuttle. They barely made it inside, sealing the door just as the horde reached them. The creatures pounded on the shuttle's hull, their faces pressed against the windows, eyes filled with a ravenous hunger. "Get us out of here," Ava shouted. Kira's hands flew across the controls, and the shuttle lifted off, the creatures falling away as they ascended into the sky. But even as they soared back into space, the crew knew this wasn't over. "They weren't just zombies," Lila said, her voice shaky. "Those things were engineered. Someone made them." "Whoever did this," Jackson said, staring at the planet growing smaller beneath them, "they wanted an army." The crew sat in silence as the shuttle raced back toward the safety of their station, but deep down, they knew something had changed. They had come to a dead planet, but what they had found was far worse than any signal. And it was only the beginning. As they redocked with the space station, the crew went through the decontamination process in uneasy silence. Lila worked at her station, scanning the data they had retrieved from the facility. "What do we do now?" Ava asked, still catching her breath. "We need to send a warning to Earth," Jackson said. "If those things get out." He trailed off, but the implication was clear. The creatures were fast, relentless, and worst of all, they weren't mindless. There had been a flicker of intelligence in their eyes, as if they knew more than they were letting on. Suddenly, the lights on the station flickered, and a low hum vibrated through the walls. "What was that?" Kira asked, her eyes wide with fear. Lila's face went pale as her screen flashed with data. "It's coming from the surface, another signal." "Impossible," Jackson said, his voice low. "We destroyed the facility's communications array." "It's not from the facility," Lila replied. "It's from something else. Something deep within the planet." The crew exchanged nervous glances. Before they could react, the station's alarms blared to life, and the main control panel lit up with warnings. "We've got incoming," Ava shouted as the sensors picked up a massive object rising from the planet's surface. Through the station's viewport, they saw it, an enormous, ancient ship, long buried beneath the planet's surface, now rising into space. Its jagged hull was covered in the same strange symbols they had seen on the ground, and its engines glowed with a sinister red light. And then, as they watched in horror, the ship's massive doors began to open. "They're coming for us," Jackson whispered, the weight of their discovery crashing down on him. "We woke them up." The screen flickered again, and Lila's face drained of all color as she read the final message coming from the planet below. "We are Legion. We are infinite."